Welcome to our WrestleMania 30 podcast. Jonathan Hood with you. We're so glad you're with us. This Sunday at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana, it'll be WrestleMania 30. I remember the first one like it was yesterday. We are going to talk to a man who single-handedly sold out the International Amphitheater as many times as Bruno Sammartino, the godfather of sports talk radio, a former WWE play-by-play man and also ring announcer, and the original heel with massive heat, a man that, again, you can go to any party, whether it's South Side or whether it's North Side on Clark Street. How am I doing, Chet Coppock?
John, I was going to say, if you do eulogies, you're hereby hired.
Only on 87th Street, only at Dodie Nash. Only there I would do it.
Good Lord, my kids, once I croak, are just going to go, hey, the old man's going, let's check the will. But, yeah, you're really rocking and rolling right now. Anyway, pretty big fella. How you been, man? It's been too long.
Yeah, I'm doing very well. When I thought about WrestleMania and thought about the 30th annual WrestleMania taking place this Sunday, there was only one phone call to make, and that's you first. I want to find out something that I don't know about you and your relationship with Vince McMahon. When did you first meet Vince McMahon, and did you know the old man? Did you know Senior?
I met the old man once, John. That goes back to the early 1970s. Met him with Bob Luce when he was in town for a card at the amphitheater. And I did get to know Vince very, very well. As you know, I was a ring announcer for the part of the Trifecta Mania back in 86, which was New York, L.A., and Chicago, and I worked Chicago branch at the then Rosemont Horizon. After I got done with that, I, continued as a ring announcer for Vince for about 6 years, but we really got to know each other in 88, ironically, just after I had joined the old loop, the Dahlmeyer, Brandmeier, Kevin Matthews loop, the forerunner to what, you're doing now. And Vince flew me out to Stamford, and we met, and then he flew me to Buffalo, where I did a couple of dark matches with, ironically, Nick Bockwinkel, who was looking for a job. And Vince called me up, and I've never mentioned this story before, and that is that Vince wanted to step down from Saturday night's main event. And he offered me that gig, and also offered me the old Superstars Challenge. And I gave a lot of thought to it, John, but number one, I didn't want to live in Stamford, Connecticut. And two, as you know, if you're a ring announcer and you're doing it once every month and you kind of are winking at the audience, everything is cool. But if you get involved and you got the tux on and you got the Ultimate Warrior and the Iron Sheik and the Hulkster and Colonel Jimmy Hart and Bobby Heenan, they're all spinning around. And eventually they're flying off, but you are forever in the middle. It's kind of like, in my opinion, John, it's kind of like joining the mob. Mm-hmm. Once you're in, it's like Hyman Roth saying to Michael Corleone, this is the business we have chosen.
Well, think about WrestleMania, the first event of WrestleMania. Think about it, the pageantry, Liberace, the Rock and Wrestling Connection. Think about Cyndi Lauper, that whole thing, Dick Clark, Muhammad Ali. When you first heard about a WrestleMania taking place at Madison Square Garden, what was your initial reaction?
I thought it was crazy. I really did. I thought that Vince was reaching way too far. And, I do know this for a fact that he virtually mortgaged himself out to get that show up and running and to make all the necessary arrangements for pay-per-views across the country. But, I give Vince a lot of credit, and I've always admired his chutzpah, if you will, John. And he gave me, when I was doing TV in New York back in the mid-'90s, we needed a show early on that was going to use the wrestling vernacular, put us over. Mm-hmm. And the guy we brought down was Vince. And I got a quote from, ironically, Stephanie, his daughter, who said that not even God can tell Vince McMahon to do something. And I mentioned that to Vince. I said, Vince, your daughter says that, if the good Lord was here right now, he couldn't tell you what to do. And Vince, being, the shy, retiring, bashful type that he is, said, well, my daughter's absolutely right. And God, if you're listening, I hope you got the message.
Yeah, not only working with WrestleMania II as the ring announcer at the Rosemont Horizon, which had to be a great experience for you, but also working a lot of Armed Forces Network broadcasts with Gorilla Monsoon. You were there. You were there at the Garden. How many of those shows did you do for Armed Forces Radio?
I would imagine that Gorilla and I did about 4 or 5 of those. The one that comes to mind, John, is WrestleMania 10. That would have been the Mania after Vegas, I believe, in '93. 94 at the Garden, WrestleMania 10, with a main event that I believe was Yokozuna against Bret Hart. A tremendous match on that card. One of the greatest matches you could ever hope to see was that ladder match between Razor Ramon, who was the greatest Hispanic ever to come out of Robbinsdale, Minnesota, and Shawn Michaels. And, working with Gorilla, he was as warm as he could be. He made life for me so comfortable. I mean, he just defined the word class. So, every time, John, I look back and I think about those years that I was doing that, fortunately, all the memories are very, very fond. The only bad memory I ever picked up during the time I spent as a wrestling announcer was one night Brutus Beefcake, who was a world-class jerk, threw a towel at me because I had inadvertently brought out the babyface rather than the heel, which kind of flew in the face of the gimmick, although I had not been informed of this. And he just got mad and threw a towel at me. But as you know, John, knowing wrestling crowds, when a wrestler does that, it's almost like telling the crowd, this guy is now fair game. But, that's way in the past. And other than that, my memories of hanging out with those guys are nothing but fun. And it's sad to me greatly to know that, a guy who was as wonderful as Randy Savage was to me has been gone now for, a rather extended period of time.
Chet Coppock with us here as we talk about WrestleMania 30 at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans on Sunday. Should be a lot of fun to see that. And talking about Macho Man Randy Savage, again, things that we don't know, Chet, that's probably going to be out in a book sometime soon because you're going to have to, because people still think about Macho today, just how charismatic he was, how he was able to, whether he was a babyface or a heel, was just be able to just capture a crowd. Did you get a chance to know the man, Randy Poffo? Did you get a chance to know the guy?
Unfortunately, I really did, and I'll tell you how it came about. We got to know each other when I was ring announcing in Chicago, and then when I went to New York, a rather funny situation occurred. Randy was up for renewal with snapping to the Slim Jim, with the Slim Jim people, and he called me up on a Thursday in New York and said, brother, I got to get together with you, and he explained what he was trying to do with Slim Jims. And I said, well, no problem. Listen, we'll get a live shot squared away for you in Tampa, and we'll do it Sunday night. He said, no, I got to be on the set with you so you and I can do our gimmick. Well, we did it, and Randy called about 72 hours later, and he'd fed the videotapes on his Slim Jims and gotten the renewal. So he called me up and said, is there anything I can do for you? At that time, my little guy, Tyler, was about 7 years old, a huge wrestling fan. Mm-hmm. I said, Randy, can you send me a T-shirt or a hat or something like that autograph for Tyler? And he said, yeah, give me a few days. Well, John, what he sent me is something I think you're probably aware of. That is the robe he wore at WrestleMania II, which is just, one of my most treasured pieces of sports memorabilia. I've had offers to sell it numerous times over the years and didn't begin to even dream of doing it.
Yeah, WrestleMania 2, that robe, and I've seen that robe. That thing is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, it's as big as the capes that Liberace used to wear.
Yes.
It weighs about 30 pounds. Randy was very, very complex, John, as you know. He didn't want Elizabeth socializing with other wrestlers, and Randy could be a test, but he had a remarkable degree of loyalty, and he really he could laugh about the profession, but he was remarkably serious about Randy Savage and what his contribution was going to be. And I really, I miss him terribly. I really do.
It's interesting, the latest news coming from the Tampa newspapers that I read earlier today, Chet, is from his brother, Lanny Poffo, who said that I would love for my brother to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, but you got to put Angelo and you got to put me in the Hall of Fame, too, as a family. What's your reaction to that? Because my thought is, Lanny, you are a very good curtain jerker. You were great for dark matches. You were never a main eventer. Why would you deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame?
I couldn't agree more. Now, Angelo Poffo, you could sell me on. Angelo was a great pioneer back in the 40s and 50s, and I would have no problem with Angelo going in whatsoever. Randy should be a slam dunk, but with all due respect to Lanny Poffo, Lanny was a prelim guy, and they gave him a gimmick and tried to put him over as the wizard, and really that didn't fly. So for Lanny to react that way, I think is being very self-serving and very egomaniacal. And as you know, John, I really don't like people who are egomaniacal. I've always had issues with people like that.
Yes, I've noticed that over the years, or at least the last few minutes, as we talk to Chet Coppock here as we do our WrestleMania podcast. We're glad that you're with us here. Think about it. The Smoky Armories, the Hammond Civic Center, International Amphitheater. How surprised are you that WrestleMania every year continues to go to these huge venues?
I can recall the days, John, back in the early 70s when Bob Luce and Dick the Bruiser and Verne Gagne and Wilbur Schneider, who were the promoters in Chicago, even though their wives were listed as the promoters of record, when they were doing $50,000 houses and thought that was New Year's Eve in Times Square. And I can recall them going outdoors in 1970, Comiskey Park, and doing about $110,000. I never in my wildest dreams. In fact, as you recall, John, WrestleMania II, while it sold out at the Garden, didn't sell out in Rosemont and didn't sell out in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would have told me, back in the day, 28 years ago, that WrestleMania would be this big, and by the way, my all-time favorite WrestleMania moment doesn't involve a match. The Fan Fest at the Garden before WrestleMania 10, one of the gimmicks was you could dunk Doink the Clown, like a regular Carnival Midway dunking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Vince being Vince realized that having one Doink the Clown was never going to work. So I'm back in the dressing area in the Garden, and John, if I'm not mistaken, there were 9 Doink the Clowns
mm-hmm.
spread out all over the place. So you could go a whole day, and it could be like a Jerry Lewis telethon, only you were dunking Doink to your heart's content.
It's not even in the ring. It's just Doink the Clown just being dunked, which was a good thing because Matt Bourne or Steve Lombardi, whoever was in that gimmick, deserved
it. Oh, that was a lousy gimmick. Well, there were about 19 different guys who were, as you know, were Doink the Clown.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned guys like Dick the Bruiser, who you worked with. You got your $10 envelope from, if you got that. Verne Gagne. The Sheik in Detroit. You mentioned Bob Luce. All these promoters, and these are the guys I grew up watching. These guys that you worked with. My goodness, I wish those guys weren't so narrow-minded that they realized that, yeah, as you mentioned, $50,000 house was great, and sure, it was territorial. But my goodness, it just took one of these guys to have like a big thought. It would have been great to see one of those guys really cash in with a huge payday.
Well, John, really the guy who put it on was Bob Luce.
Mm-hmm.
If Verne Gagne would have taken the handcuffs off of Bob Luce, Chicago might have become the WWE that we see today based in Stanford. Bob was just a treasure trove of ideas. He was this endless stream of concepts, most of which got knocked down by Verne Gagne because Gagne thought wrestling was, still had to have rudiments of the AAU and the U.S. Olympic Committee, and he thought Luce was, nuts half the time. And Bob was, to put it mildly, a character, but Bob had this remarkable sense of what the public wanted. And by the way, the first time I ever heard wrestlers introduced to music was at a Bob Luce card with Dick the Bruiser main eventing back about 1971, and Bob told me the following week in conversation that Gagne had kiboshed the music.
Oh,
so Bob was really, he was years ahead of his time.
That's remarkable. That's the first time I've ever heard that because, of course, Michael Hayes and another guy that has no ego whatsoever says that he was the first with the Freebirds in the early 80s to come out with music. So,
when I was sportscasting at WMAQ in the mid-'80s,
mm-hmm.
it would have been about 84, 85. There was an outdoor show at Comiskey Park that merged Memphis, Mid-South, and Gagne's AWA. And Michael P.S. Hayes came in to do some taping with us. And at that time I was driving a Cadillac, and Michael wanted to borrow my car for a few hours. And he went off with Gordy Roberts from the Freebirds.
Mm-hmm.
And, suffice to say, I get a call about 4 or 5 hours later, and they said they're both drunk. would they mind if I brought the car back the following day? And when the car got back the next day, John, it looked like there'd been an explosion inside of the Anheuser-Busch brewery. And all I could think of to myself was, you dimwitted bohunk, why the heck would you lend your car to a couple of nutcases like that?
That's amazing. You've been very vocal about today's product. You've mentioned many times that you're not a fan of Chicago's own CM Punk and some of the other guys. What's your disconnect?
I don't get what Punk's all about. I really don't. I wish I did. I admire his skills, but John, if you think about what you were growing up with and what I was dealing with when I was only in my mid-70s, and that would be the WWF. I mean, the whole era changes, as you know, in the Garden in '84 when the Iron Sheik puts Hulk over and Hulk wins the strap. But the characters I had in those days, I mean, good Lord, I could go on and on telling stories. And the only character I like right now, who I find to be somewhat intriguing, is, you got to help me on this one. He's the guy who comes out with the beard and the lantern. And
yeah,
that's a pretty good gimmick.
That's Bray Wyatt. That's Mike Rotundo's son.
Yeah, Mike Rotundo's kid was IRS. I saw him a couple of Mondays back, and then I actually made it a point to watch him again. And all I could think of was, whoa, this is probably the best thing I've seen emerge in terms of a personality with potential within the WWE in the ages. And by the way, John, let me ask you this. How is Hogan going to involve himself in either the main event or some match at WrestleMania 30 so that you bring him back 2 months later in a pay-per-view?
Anything for a payday and alimony. Anything to pay Linda. He'll drop the leg at least one more time to do that. My God. Speaking of egos, my God, he definitely will do something. He's the Hulkster.
Did I ever tell you about the night that Hulk Hogan and I had to shower together at what was that? I mean, this is really a dandy, John.
No, I never heard this.
brutally hot night, and the air conditioning didn't work in the Rosemont Horizon, and I'm wearing a tux, and I just sweat right through the sucker. And Hulk came out and did his bit with his hand, let me hear you, and then wrestled for about 7 minutes, and the hand went up twice, and then finally, he found that inner strength because of the vitamins and the prayers and all the other nonsense, and he won. Well, afterwards, he had to cut promos, and I was back just busy with people. So finally, there were only 2 people left in the dressing room. Everyone was gone, and the guys are Hogan and myself. And so we both walked back to take a shower. And I'll be frank with you, it made me feel rather inadequate. Well, we got done, John, and there were no towels, and we had to dry off our skin, if you will. We had to mop off our skin by hand dryers.
Yes.
And the moral of the story is, if you bring out a wrestling card, always bring your own towel.
If I go to ChetCoppock.tumblr.com, what would I find, Chet?
Oh, well, 80% of what you're going to find is about 1/3 true.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, John, because I still feed ChetCoppock.com, but I have become a freak of Facebook, as you know. I love to tweet. Having a ball right now. Things are really terrific, and if I can take time out of that, I don't want to sound maudlin, but I'm so thrilled by the success you've carved out and everything you've done, and I really firmly believe this, that as strong as you are right now as a personality, that you really your best days are still down the road.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That means a lot coming from you, from someone I listen to in the crib. And I don't know
while your mother was going, listen to somebody more credible like Charles Manson.
Or in that case, J.J. Jackson. But that's another story. Chet, as always, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Anytime you rock and roll, my man. And am I going to buy the pay-per-view? Of course. And in my heart of hearts, John, I'm always going to be a mark.
Yeah, Yeah, so will I. No question about it. Chet, thank you very much for your time.
Take care, buddy. You're the best.